In today's video, we're going to talk about the qualities that you need to have in a real estate agent if you choose to hire a real estate agent to help you sell your home. Now, I'm not here to tell you who specifically to hire as an agent, but we're going to talk about some of the most important qualities. What we're going to do is we're going to first talk about the 4 non-negotiable most important qualities that you must have in a real estate agent. Then we're going to talk about a few things that are nice to have in a real estate agent and why. And then finally, we're going to talk about qualities that you would like to have in a real estate agent based upon your personality type. I'm going to help you identify your personality type specifically, and then what kind of qualities you should look for in a real estate agent that's going to help be a really good match for you specifically, because you're going to be working with somebody so closely for the next few months. They're going to see most aspects of your life, and it would really be nice to have a real estate agent who hits the kind of characteristics that you most need to feel confident or to feel comfortable in the real estate transaction. So let's get into it. First thing we're going to talk about are the first 4 non-negotiable characteristics that you most need to have in an agent. And the first characteristic that you need is an agent who has some experience. Now, I'm not talking about an agent who's been in the business for decades. That's not what really matters. But you do want an agent who has at least a few transactions under their belt, maybe about a year in the business. And the reason why this matters is because there's so many things that can come up in a transaction that you hope you've had an agent who has had experience with this before. So when the issue does come up, they know how to handle it quickly and efficiently, and who knows how to be proactive because they've seen some things come up before and they can see where things are headed. So having an agent with some experience is important. But so long as they have a few transactions under their belt, an agent like that could be way more effective than an agent who has been in the business for years. So experience counts up just to a certain point, and then it really comes down to the individual characteristics of your agent. The next quality you want is an agent who is highly organized and proactive. In real estate, there is actually a ton of liability at stake for everybody involved in the transaction. And you want to have an agent who is really thinking ahead about this kind of stuff. So if you have an agent who seems like they're constantly checking in with questions, they're asking you to respond to things, they're giving you a lot more paperwork than maybe an agent you worked with a few years ago, you should actually consider yourself lucky, because the more organized and proactive your agent is, the more they have the potential to save you money. One, when it comes down to potential liability that comes up both while you're under contract and potentially even after the deal has finished. You don't want somebody coming back around to you saying, hey, I'm going to sue you. I'm angry because some issue that your agent could have prevented didn't happen and you didn't know about it. But then also just in terms of money during the transaction, there is a lot of money that could be left on the table if you don't have an agent who is really proactive and organized. Next, you want an agent who has a certain level of local knowledge. You want to have an agent who can foresee certain things because they understand that you're way out in the country and you might need a full survey. And in Boulder, you can't get a survey for 6 months. You don't want that to be a last minute surprise. You want someone who understands if you need to be smart rate compliant or if you need a well permit, maybe that's going to take 30 days. You don't want someone who's thinking about this 3 days before it's time to close. So someone who has that local level of knowledge is going to really serve you well as a seller. But also you want an agent who is going to be aware of things like, are you in a floodplain or are there certain remodel restrictions? And you might think, why does that matter? I'm the seller. This is up to the buyer's due diligence. But you never know what kind of agent the buyer might have. And so you don't want, a couple days before closing, all of a sudden the buyer wants to pull out because they realize they can't do what they wanted to do with the home. If their agent isn't on top of that, you better hope that your agent is and that they're listening carefully. And again, they're being really proactive in making sure people have all the information that they need. Finally, you want an agent with really strong interpersonal skills. You might think you want some agent who's a bulldog, but that is not what you actually need. Because in a real estate transaction, there are 4 main parties. There's 2 agents and then there's a buyer and seller. That is a lot of potential for egos to flare up and to get into conflict. So you want an agent who is humble, but really paying attention and knowing what is most important to people. Because even though the buyer might want some kind of credit, at the end of the day, if you have an agent who makes the other side feel heard, feel valued, who meets them where they're at, that can still keep the transaction moving forward, even if money never comes into play. But in all of my years as a real estate agent, I would say this is probably one of the most important characteristics, because I very frequently see deals fall apart or money get spent that never had to be spent, all because you had an agent who couldn't get their ego out of it and just help people hear what they needed to hear. Next, I'm going to tell you about a couple skills that aren't absolutely necessary, and they happen to be my skills, but I'm going to tell you why I think they can really come in handy for you if you have an agent who has these skills. So I have quite a bit of construction experience doing my own construction projects, not necessarily for other people, but I have a lot of awareness in terms of how involved a project might be and how much that might cost. And that can really come in handy when sellers are thinking about, should they do certain things to get their home ready for the market, or when they're under contract and inspection comes up. I can help them think through, this is what it might look like, this is what it might cost, here's how we might want to handle it. So I just have a lot of knowledge to bring to those kinds of conversations. And then secondly, I've been an interior designer for the past 10 years, and it's pretty nice being able to help my sellers. One, if they want to make any updates, I can help them think through, again, what it's going to cost, but what's going to appeal to the widest audience possible. And when it comes to getting their home ready for the market, I always walk through clients' houses and just edit certain things. I shop their house, I make the flow make more sense, I make their house look more appealing to a wider audience, and that both helps in the walkthroughs and in the photos. So that is a way that I save my clients money, and it comes in handy a lot. And finally, a way that a design background can really come into play is when I have buyers who are really struggling with the layout of a house or seeing the potential. And this is where a lot of people really struggle to see the potential of a place. I actually can make mock-ups and designs on my computer and help them visualize, here's what's going to be possible for them with this house. So that can come in handy as well. But in terms of those characteristics, I would not make or break a deal in terms of who you decide to move forward with, whether or not they have a construction and design background. The first four things I mentioned, those truly are the non-negotiables that you really need to have in an agent. Now we're going to talk about personality types and how to identify what kinds of qualities in an agent are going to be a particularly good fit for you. Now, there are a variety of different systems out there for categorizing personality types. Today, I'm going to talk about this in the context of the DISC, D-I-S-C, personality system. And the reason why I think this one is good to apply to this situation is it helps you understand what kinds of qualities or characteristics are going to help you feel the most comfortable or confident in a potentially high stakes and high stress situation. In the DISC system, there are 4 personality types made up of 2 different categories. So you can think about a grid, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And that grid has 2 different categories. So you can categorize this way or this way. So personality can meet up here, can meet up here, it can meet up here, or along here. Let's talk about those 2 categories, and then I'll help you identify where you fall within the 4 personality types. The first type is active. Active people tend to be very future-oriented, and they tend to talk a lot about how things are going to be. And when talking, they tend to be pretty active and pretty assertive in their conversations. The other type is the passive type. Passive people tend to be more present-oriented or past-oriented, and in conversations, they tend to have a calmer and quieter demeanor. Next are the task-oriented versus people-oriented kind of people. The task-oriented people, they tend to really like to focus on a task at hand. They want to get down to business. They really thrive in being organized and having checklists, knowing what to expect and knowing what to do. These are the kinds of people who will really thrive when it comes to being organized and comes to doing research and making choices. The next type are the passive type. These are the people who tend to be more people-oriented first. It's not that they can't also be organized and get stuff done, but they tend to first be interested in people and conversations and making those kinds of connections. So for example, if you have a meeting and a bunch of people are coming into a room, the task-oriented person is more likely to sit down, they're going to review their notes, they're going to look at the checklist, and when the meeting times begins, they're going to want to just get to business. Whereas the more people-oriented people, they'll come in maybe with their paperwork, but they're going to start having the conversations. Perhaps they don't mind if they don't start the meeting right on time because for them, they're already getting things done by making those connections with people. But that to them has value. And it's not to say say that one way or the other is right. Both can be highly effective, but it's important to know where you land in this and then having somebody who's going to be a good match for you. Okay, let's talk about the 4 personality types that come out of those 2 categories. The first personality type is the dominant personality. This is somebody who is going to be active and who is going to be task-oriented. These are the people that really thrive on checklists, being organized, knowing what to expect. They're going to be just fine having conversations with people. They don't need things to just be in emails, but they really want to keep the conversation focused on what needs to happen next. With this personality type, their biggest fear, and this isn't true for everybody, but generally their biggest fear tends to be being taken advantage of. So if this is your personality type, you really don't need an agent who's giving you the warm fuzzies, but you do want an agent who instills a high level of trust and confidence for you. Someone who makes you feel confident that they're organized, they're not going to drop the ball, they're going to check in with you regularly, and someone who's also assertive. They're not afraid to have hard conversations. You don't want an agent where you're wondering at the end of the day, I really wanted this credit, and are they going to have that hard conversation with the other side? Not that your agent is a bulldog, but just that they're on top of it and they're staying logical and they're not shying away from what needs to be done. Also, because the biggest fear for this personality type can tend to be being taken advantage of, it is important that you have an agent who makes you feel heard. You really want to feel confident that your agent is listening to what's important to you and then settling in and taking care of what needs to be taken care of. The next is the influencer personality type. This is someone who is active and someone who is people-oriented. These are the kinds of people who like to have fun. They still want to stay on task and get things done, but they want to have a good time along the way. Now, if this is your personality type, your real estate agent might be a little too busy to go out and have happy hour with you at the end of each day, but it would be helpful for you to have people who are actively involved in your life, in terms of your social circle, who are going to get involved in the real estate process with you. Maybe you have a packing party, maybe you just have someone you can talk to about what's going to happen next. That will really help for you keeping those relationships alive and feeling like you're moving forward and having a good time along the way. So in terms of a quality that you really want to look for in an agent, when it comes to influencers, their biggest fear tends to be feeling like they can't be themselves. So because again, you're going to be working with someone for several months, they're going to see you in so many aspects of your life in a pretty intimate level. And it's important that you feel like you are around somebody where you can be yourself. That is really going to help you have a lot more confidence and more emotional investment in the process. The next personality type is the consciousness personality type. This is somebody who is both passive and task-oriented. These are the people who are really good at just putting their heads down and attending to the details, having the checklist. They don't really need somebody who makes them feel seen or heard or having warm fuzzies. You just want somebody who makes you feel confident and that they're on top of things. And if you're just communicating through email, so be it, not a big deal. If this is your personality type, you're actually the most likely to thrive in this real estate transaction because it can be long, it can be grueling, but you have the personality type that is not going to deflate and run out of energy halfway through the process. So in terms of the qualities that you need in an agent, first, it's probably important that you have an agent who's not just going to spend a lot of time with idle chit chat. Some people really love that, but for you specifically, that's probably going to get pretty frustrating. One, because you don't value it. Two, you're feeling like it's not a good use of your time. You just want to keep moving forward and do what needs to be done. Because meanwhile, you still have a life going on that you'd like to attend to. And then also in terms of qualities of an agent, you really need someone who is highly organized. This too is going to be pretty frustrating and it's going to lower your confidence really quick if you feel like you have an agent who is just letting the ball drop left and right. So someone who comes to you with a very clear plan and is very organized each time they speak with you, that is really going to help you stay engaged and feel like you have an ally in this selling process. Finally, the last personality type is the steadiness personality type. This is someone who is passive and people-oriented. This personality type tends to be the most resistant to change. This can feel the selling process pretty uncomfortable for these personality types. So you really want to have somebody who brings you a lot of comfort and a lot of confidence during the transaction. So to achieve that, first, you absolutely want an agent who makes you feel like they value you as a whole person. Yes, they're organized, but they're also listening deeply and they're slowing down and meeting you where you're at. They're giving you the time to express how you feel, or if they hear a need come up, they actually really hear it and can meet that for you. Now, of course, they're not your therapist. They still have a job to do. So they will keep moving things along, but they're not just going to brush over the things that you need to talk about that are emotionally coming up for you in this process. Again, they're meeting you as a whole person. That is going to help a lot throughout this transition. Another thing that is really going to help you specifically throughout the transaction is having an agent who checks in with you week to week and says, okay, because you're a person who's present oriented and saying, this is the goal for this week. This is what we're going to do. And you can just relieve the stress and just focus on one thing for that week. The next week they check in, say at the beginning of the week, this is what's going to happen this week. So you don't have to stress out about the whole big picture. You can feel confident that my agent's on it. They're going to tell me what I need to do, when it needs to get done, and together we're going to make it through this process. Now, if you're thinking of selling in the near future and you're in Boulder or in a nearby area, you are welcome to head to my website. You can get on my calendar and you can interview me to see if I might be a good agent for you. But whomever you choose, I hope you find someone that is a really good fit for you and makes the selling process as smooth and as enjoyable as possible. Thank you for your time. Best of luck in selling your home. Bye.